What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today's playtest is all about the Shadow 3. Now, I have a special guest for today's video, Michael Cunningham, 7MLC. Go over to his channel and check it out if you haven't already. He will be wearing the Shadow 2 as sort of a contrast in this little playtest. I am super excited about these. As you guys probably know, I have seen these many months ago at the Under Armour headquarters, which I was fortunate enough to go to for some product testing. And I got really excited about these because these are a very close replica and or inspired by one of the greatest Nike football boots of all time, the Nike Flyknit Ultra. So without further ado, let's hop into the playtest. All right, so getting the Shadow 3 on feet. These are a similar fit in terms of getting them on as the previous generation, but as soon as you get your feet in, you understand how much of a different feel these are. I would say that the toe box area here actually feels quite similar, particularly because this coating feels almost identical to some of that synthetic that they had over the Intellinet material in the forefoot, but the midfoot is really where you tell that difference. So as I lace these up, you'll be able to see my foot, which is obviously widest in that, how do you say, in the midfoot area right here. And because they didn't put any of this extra coating right there, it allows my foot to actually poke out a little bit. And honestly, it feels pretty incredible. It's one of the most one-to-one sock-like sensations I think I've felt in a really long time from a pair of football boots. Again, not too dissimilar from that Nike Flyknit Ultra, which most people, in fact, I think everybody who tried those absolutely loved them. And it's one of those boots that Nike has sort of had developed for a really long time, released in 2017, and then everyone was like, well, why didn't you release that boot? Well, here we are with Under Armour, now 7 years later, and they've created something that is potentially even better, to be honest, because not only does it have a little bit of grip element with the stickiness of the synthetic coating, but you also have that carbon fiber sole that is super aggressive. And as you can see today, we are playing on that firm ground pitch, so you'll get a really good idea of what they're like to perform and how they fit over the course of the next couple minutes. All right, so straight away with this kind of boot that is an all knit. This Intellinet upper is actually quite a lot thicker than a lot of the other stuff on the market, which is going to give you a really interesting kind of padded sensation when you're playing with it and passing. Let's go reverse now. There, play, there. Nice, yeah. And it's not quite leather-like, obviously, because it is that sock-like knit material, but compared to the generation that Michael is wearing currently, that's a lot thinner. You had the exo mesh that was sitting in the midfoot, and so that material not only, gotcha, play, touch, yeah, not only is a lot thinner, but you also have sort of this extra little bit of material on the inside of that boot that's gonna kind of be a little bit more barefoot as you play it, whereas these ones feel a lot more cushioned and thick, which I guess just depends on what you actually prefer. Okay, next thing to talk about is gonna be this sole plate. And I know I've got so many questions from reviews of the one that, the second generation that Michael's wearing is, hey, are these usable on FG and AG? And the reason I've often said I actually think they are is, although it's got a little bit of an awkward and aggressive heel design, it's one of those boots that when you're pivoting, it actually isn't all that aggressive on firm ground, believe it or not. So it does have, let's switch sides now. Yep, I'll just go across, yeah. Although it does have a really nice amount of snapback to it and rigidity, it isn't a pair of boots that I'd actually say, like a Vapor, for instance, almost is difficult to pivot. So as I'm coming around this way and I'm twisting and turning, that's actually not bad for a pair of boots that's got only bladed studs, right? So as we're moving side to side and really making those short, sharp cuts, I don't feel like it's overly aggressive, which is why I think it's actually suitable for both pitch types. All right, so in terms of quality upgrades to this pair of boots, I do think that it's gonna be a personal preference about what kind of You know, whether you want a grip element, whether you want something a little bit more sticky, that's gonna be up to personal preference. But honestly, for me, a boot that's this comfortable and also this responsive is one of those things that is really hard to come by, at least for my foot shape. And so for a boot like this to be so comfortable, oh, there we go, straight out of the box, it is one of those things that as you start to play in it, you realize like, okay, maybe comfort is the most important thing when evaluating football boots, and especially one that sort of bridges the gap between responsiveness and comfort. It really does such a good job of kind of bridging that gap a little bit more so than the previous generation, simply because of that exo mesh in the midfoot. And that's just me talking selfishly as a wide-footed player. And as far as shooting goes, particularly when it comes to a little bit more of a padded sensation, personally, I love this type of boot for like a passing and long balls and all that stuff. And I know never evaluate a pair of football boots based on like what skill set you feel better in them in terms of like what boot you're gonna buy. But for me, I actually think I prefer something a little bit thinner for shooting purposes. I might actually, as Michael sets it, I'm gonna come actually a little bit more like lacing like that. That feels good. But just from a ball feel perspective, because this doesn't really have that much grip element to it, I'm not as much a fan of something that's a little bit more bent. So I'd rather hit, with these boots, I'd rather hit like a ping, or I'd rather hit like that ball, just really rip it up and over as like more of a power strike type of thing. So this is one thing that I think the previous gen that Michael has actually does a little bit better, at least as far as what I prefer in a football boot. And that really is this really nice pingy sensation. It's a little bit thinner because it doesn't have some of those like that ribbed element to it. So this one, very similar to the Flyknit Ultra, has this sort of ribbing texture to it, and that one doesn't. It's a lot more of a smooth, seamless design that's a little bit thinner. And so from that perspective, that's what I prefer from a pinginess sensation. But again, from a first touch, passing, and like long ball, these remind me a lot of the texturing and the thickness of the Phantom Ultra, actually. So Flyknit Ultra, Phantom Ultra, it's got this really beautiful, like comfortable, kind of plush, pingy sensation to it. All right, so with pivoting, so especially with movements like that, right, where we want to take that sort of sharp turn around the corner, that's where I'm really noticing the extra little bit of give that these boots have in comparison to some of the other boots on the market that are sort of speed boots, right? So you think of speed boots like a Furon or something else that's gonna be very good going forward, but it doesn't have that pivotability that, at least on an FG pitch, these ones seem to have. So as I come around the corner, oh, and I didn't even touch that one. Oh, it's one of these sole plates that I actually really enjoy playing on this type of surface. And I think for those of you who do play on an AG surface, honestly, I think you'll be totally fine. All right, so this is where I think the Shadow really comes to life, and that is these kind of longer pings that you just want that sort of padded, pingy feel to them. And I do think it's a boot that just absolutely shines in that category. Now, as far as things that I would improve about the Shadow 3 after having used it for 2 different videos now, and as well as my own little play test, because I was so excited to get these in finally in the production form, really is, I think the sole plate, having it be carbon fiber is great, but if it doesn't give you that absolute pingy snap sensation, that's one thing that I think really could use maybe a little bit more responsiveness. I think that could help a lot. And then the other thing is, I do think that, even though I've said in many times during this video that I do think it's a boot that's gonna be totally suitable for FG, I do think from a marketing perspective, you gotta have an AG model of this, because otherwise people are gonna freak out and it's not gonna be as, how do you say, not going to be as marketable if you don't have something with conical studs. Because I think a boot like this that had conical studs, which, oh, by the way, all the pros are wearing, because all the pros have the Magnetico sole plate on here, that's where I think this boot really, really could shine, is if it had sort of conical or even something a little bit hexagonal or something a little bit different, almost like maybe like a Hypervenom 3 sole plate, and then this boot would be almost perfect in my opinion. So yeah, I think, again, a lot of the improvements, at least in this boot, I genuinely think have to do with the sole plate. From an upper perspective, this boot is absolutely sensational. I don't think there is anything that I would do differently, given the scope of what the shoe is meant for, which is responsiveness, comfort, and a little bit more kind of mainstream performance. All right, guys, so that wraps up the playtest for the Shadow 3. So this is kind of, maybe session 3 in these, or session 4?
Yeah, 4 or 5 now, actually.
Okay, 4 or 5. Yep. Awesome. What do you think of the second gen?
Yeah, I've only been recently introduced to them, thanks to you, Noah. Obviously, I had a pair in my size, and I was always a bit hesitant with this sole plate to try them out. I thought it looked a bit too aggressive, but actually really nice on an FG surface. Aesthetically really nice. Not as snappy as I was expecting. I think when I saw the Puma Ultra 5 carbon, I was expecting it to be really stiff, but it's got a good amount of flexibility and snapback, which is really nice. The fit overall, it's like a glove. A little bit of expansion around the toes, I would say. So even though it's a snug fit at first, it's not too tight. It's just a very personalized fit. But overall, very impressed. Lockdown is insane on them. I'm excited to try the new gen as well, because I actually missed out on the Flyknit Ultra. I know you've mentioned it's kind of a reincarnation of it. So
big time.
Excited to try those out. And if they're better than these, I can only imagine a really solid football boot.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully the train doesn't get in our way too much. But yeah, so I think from a fit and feel perspective, obviously got extensive experience in the Shadow 2. And this exo mesh here in the midfoot is really where my foot gets kind of the most problem areas. And in terms of that area, now you have this basically exposed Intellinet upper, which really does a sensational job. So yes, maybe, I'd actually be curious on your opinion when you do get a chance to try them, because I do think it's going to be a situation where some players are going to like the second gen because it actually is more locked in, just generally speaking. But from a comfort perspective, man, these are just absolutely ridiculous. Like this upper, the Intellinet upper is insane. As I said in the long ball, I do think that for a carbon sole, I would agree. I do think this needs maybe a little bit more something to it, which I hope Under Armour is working on the updated version of this, because we've had this sole plate now in 3 generations of boots. So hopefully an update is coming to this soon. But overall, I mean, look, as far as comfort and performance goes, these are really hard to beat. And it's a boot that I think maybe over time might get a little sloppy, just because they don't have that lateral stability on there. That being said, straight out of the box and in the first couple sessions, these are just absolutely insane. If there's one thing that you're excited for trying this generation, what is it?
I think it's just the texture on the upper with it as well. I think it's just giving me such Flyknit Ultra vibes, and Eden Hazard in his prime and stuff like that. I just can't wait to be dribbling around. They just seem very, very like sharp on the ball. Just having that little bit of texture is sometimes nice.
Definitely. Yeah. Cool. Well, that's going to wrap up today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Link down in the description box below as well for Michael's channel, 7MLC Training. And as always, be awesome. Take care. I'll see you guys in the next video.